Hello, welcome to Plant-Based Large Family. I'll start with some weekly news and then we'll move into what our soil looks like underneath the wood chips. We've had some cooler temperatures and so our brassicas are looking really good. We've been just using kale for smoothies, but now that we're producing a lot more, we'll start having kale salads. The carrots that I planted this late summer are looking good. Because of the cooler weather, we're harvesting less of our summer things, but we still are getting tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, strawberries, and raspberries. I'm also able to harvest some lettuce. I just harvested some, so it doesn't look like much, but we're able to harvest some lettuce. We've also been harvesting green beans. You can see they've gotten a little bit frostbitten. Okay, as far as soil health goes, obviously we put down mulch. We also put down manure just whenever we clean out the coop, which is about twice a year. There are lots of other things you could do to increase soil health, but that costs money, and so we don't do it. But I just wanted to show you what our soil looks like with nothing added other than manure here and there. This was our first Back to Eden garden. Everything else you see in the garden came later. This was all we did the very first year. So this is the oldest. This is the only section that is actually 6 years old. Okay, I don't have a cameraman, so bear with me here. I'm just going to go ahead and dig in this spot. I'm going to put the camera down so I can dig in this spot. And then I will show you what it looks like. So all I did was I went back and forth and I lifted it up a little and I'm going to pull it back. You can see down in there it is all black. My trowel is about 6 inches deep, or reaches 6 inches down, and that is all black. I would say the top 3 inches is compost, and underneath that is soil, and it is black soil, and I'm going to keep going. Okay, I do see some clay right here, but even this clay is not as red as it was when we first put the wood chips down. It's not as hard, it's not as red, so even that's starting to change. So this is 6 years old, and once you get about 7 inches down, I'm starting to get into harder soil, not as good soil. So this is our first patch, our first section of Back to Eden. So the next section we did was the next year. I planted this strawberry patch, my ever-bearing patch. So I'm going to go into it. Find a place to dig. Right, here's a good place. Okay, this section was a lot more buoyant. And you can see the mulch is broken down a lot more than the other section. Now we added this mulch last fall, and in the section with the tomatoes and whatnot, we added that in the spring. So this has had an extra 6 months to break down. Okay, I'm going to lift up. And as far as the eye can see, it's black. I'm going to dig down a little bit more. Black, black. This is all soil. Well, there's some mulch, but this is all soil. It's nice and fluffy. Still black. I'm not going to stick my arm all the way down there, but I am starting... Oh, worm. I'm starting to get to some that is not as black. This is still really black, but I'm starting to get to some that's looks like it's resembling a little bit of clay. That's about, I would say, 9 inches deep. So this is the next section, and it actually has better soil than that first section. I can't tell you definitively why, but from everything I've learned, it's because of the mycorrhizal fungi that are around the perennials. The first section of Back to Eden has always been annuals, and this section has always been perennials. And the mycorrhizal fungi from what I've learned, they thrive with root systems that stay. They don't get ripped up every fall. So I'm assuming that's why this section has done so much better. Since I'm here, I just want to show you. You can see our strawberry plants have been frostbitten a little bit, and they're starting to, die back. You can see that's turning into mulch. But look, I mean, we're still getting a good number. Our third year back to Eden, we prepped this section underneath the apple tree, and I did it initially just to make the apple tree more healthy. But then after watching Paul's videos, and he said how great things did underneath trees, and again, I think it's because of the established root system and the increase of mycorrhizal fungi, that I started planting under here. And this huge mass of strawberries 2 springs ago was just 2 rows right here on the outside of the apple tree, and then 2 rows on the other side of the apple tree. This is the south side, and the east side is where I planted 2 rows, and they just spread, and I've been trying to give them away. What I really want to do is find like a community garden to give them away to. I mean, I could give thousands of plants away and still be good, but all the community gardens I'm finding, they don't have room, and then when I tell people to come get them, they'll come and get like 3 plants, and you can't even tell. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to dig up a lot of these and just throw them to the chickens just so I'll have rows. I know Paul doesn't do that. He just lets them grow in mass. But what I noticed last year when a lot of mine didn't come back, so this grew back more patchy because we didn't have decomposed manure, and so we just kind of threw masses of hot manure, and so it killed some of the some of the strawberry beds, or some of the strawberry plants, which was fine. It turned out to be great, actually, because these came back more patchy, so they had more sun, and we got bigger strawberries, and we got more strawberries than when it was just a big mass like this. So anyway, back to this section. This was our 3rd year of Back to Eden, which means it's 3 years old. This whole, you can see there's just like half an inch of mulch. And again, this was covered last fall, so it's been almost a year, and we only have half an inch of mulch at the top of this section, which tells you, okay, we are in Zone B, Eastern North Carolina. People ask how often you have to apply mulch. Where we are, how much rain we get, how hot and humid it gets, once a year. Because this spring, if I don't cover this fall, in the spring, weeds will be all over this place because it's so thinly covered with mulch. So, if you keep it covered with new mulch, as soon as it gets thin like this, then you won't have any weed problems. So what I did was I pushed the mulch aside, and then I dug down and I fluffed up some soil, so you can see that there's a worm. So you can see this is really dark. Then when I got down to the bottom, it was lighter, but still not red. What our natural soil is, if you want to call it soil, is red clay, or not red clay, is orange clay. And you can see, I'm going to dig out in the yard. I'm just going to dig up some grass. So you can see it is really orange. And this is not. This is kind of a mix between orange and that really good black soil. So I dug down, I would say 10 or so inches, and it was all that black soil. And that's when I started getting to this lighter soil. And so I just kind of fluffed it up so you could see it. But it's still good to plant in. So as I suspected, this section actually has definitely better soil than our first Back to Eden section, and possibly even better soil than our second Back to Eden section, which had strawberries in it. Okay, year 4, we did this section that I'm showing you, and I'll dig some and show you how that soil is doing. And then we actually didn't expand year 5 or year 6, or what we did was all of the blueberry plants or bushes used to be covered on the ground, used to be covered with tarp, because we just couldn't think of anything else that we could do to keep the Bermuda grass away from choking them out. And so then when we started doing BT and realized it really worked, we just covered everything, even the tarp, with mulch. And so what we've been doing, instead of expanding by making the garden bigger, we have been every year just raking back mulch, ripping up tarp, covering it with manure, and covering it with mulch. So that's what we've been doing. So we haven't actually expanded past year 1, 2, 3, 4. So year 5 and 6, we've just been going through the blueberry patch and making it back to Eden, and by ripping up mulch. So we are nearly finished ripping up all of the tarp. Possibly this winter or next winter we'll be done. Then we'll start expanding even further out into an even bigger garden. And what we're doing to prep that is we have tarp around the garden. You can see over there we have a big tarp, and that's just killing the grass. And so that when we're ready to turn that into back to Eden, we just pull up the tarp, the grass is dead, and then we can just put down some newspaper, some manure, and some mulch, and plant it the next spring. And then we move that tarp out even further to prep the next year's garden. So, I know that tarp is not ideal. It has all sorts of chemicals in it. But if you've ever dealt with Bermuda grass, you can see it's even climbing over the tarp. So, making trenches and stuff just doesn't even work for Bermuda grass. So that is what we do to prepare, like the year before we want to turn something into onto year 1, 2, 3, 4, onto year 4. So 2 years ago. So this section was prepped 2 years ago. And what we did was we put cardboard down, and let's see, we put manure. This has had a manure treatment. We put manure from the coop only one time on this section. So cardboard, manure one time, mulch, I guess if it was 3 years ago, that'd be 3 times. So I will show you what this looks like. On the top, it's big chunks. Then I scrape that aside. You can see it's really broken down right here. Really good and broken down. It's already turning into soil. Okay, I'm going to dig down. This is where I first dug down, and it is just black all the way down. Let me dig a little bit more. I'm starting to get to more gray. There's a rock. Starting to get to more gray. I'm hitting a rock here. Let's see. From where we started to where I'm hitting this rock, I would say that's about 11 inches. It's almost the whole depth of the trowel. And still, where I'm hitting the rock, I'm going to pull up some mulch, I'm going to pull up some dirt. I'm trying to move that rock out of the way, but there are quite a few rocks in there, which is fine. That's just minerals. So you can see this is a mix of that dark soil and some of the gray soil, but still a really good planting medium. So the first year I did potatoes in here, and the next year I did watermelon, and I've done green beans in here as well. Let me show you really quickly what it looks like just naturally. So I flipped some grass over, and this is what's underneath, and it's more orange, if you can see, just because we're in the shade. So now you can see what a difference it makes to cover it with mulch. What our Back to Eden garden soil looks like versus this. Won't even clump. So you can see that it's definitely better, and that what's going to make it better is planting perennials all around your annuals. So trees or just plants that are perennials like asparagus and berries. So I hope that helped. At the very least, I hope it just gave you encouragement to stick with it, and just to show you that it really does work. So I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next week.